Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe P Zapia, and today we have a little shallow 10-team 5x5 mock. We're going to throw it at you today. Not every league has 12 or 15 people. Some are a little bit smaller, and some are a little bit more shallow. And speaking of shallow, the Welsh is here, joining me, hanging out here, and of course, Joe Arico, everyone's favorite Canadian. Well, look, we're trying out new nicknames because we tried out Hollywood for you on the BP. I'm kidding. I love you. And I'm in a good mood because Pete Alonso is now a Met as of recording this. So I'm very excited about that news. Joe Arico, I'm sorry. Toronto Blue Jays yet again whiffed on getting a big free agent. Are you doing okay today?
I'm doing okay because if we got Alonso, it would have made it a lot easier for Rogers to say, we got a first baseman. We don't need Vladdy. So it leaves the door more open for Vladdy, whatever's going to happen there. But it's not the end of the world for me. It's not the end of the world. But I'm happy for you, Joe. Somebody's got to be happy here.
Vladdy played 12 games at third base, so they could have justified Vladdy back over to third a little bit. Pete Alonso at first.
Well, do you enjoy Joe Arico's cockeyed optimism? I do. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's a Canadian optimism. I like it.
It is. And hopefully we're going to bring some of that optimism into today's draft. It is a 5x5 draft. We are 10 teams only today. So what we're going to do, we're going to change things up a little bit in terms of how the roster is structured. We're going to do the middle infield, corner infield, 4 outfielders, 1 util spot. We're going to do 4 pitcher spots for starters, 2 for relievers, and then 3 wild card pitching spots. No bench today. We're just going to get in and out, have some fun with Draft Wizard. And of course, you should be using Draft Wizard as well for all of your draft preparation. Download Draft Wizard MLB app today or go to fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard if you want the ultimate cheat code to winning all your drafts. You can perform multiple draft simulations. You can get expert advice. You can use the cheat sheet creator. You can use all of these tools and then sync your leagues for free and use the draft software in your actual drafts. That's the best way to make sure that you are getting the winning edge in every single draft you do in real time. But in the meantime, use the mock draft simulator again. Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard MLB is ready for you to download. All right, let's get to the spots too. Let's see. Welsh, where are you on this draft? Is that true? Are you at number 1 today? You taking the easy way out, brother?
The easy way out. I don't think I've done one yet. I just figured it would be nice. I will to say this too. As someone that does like 15, I play in Scott White's 24 team points dynasty. And
I passed that off to you, by the way. I had done that for a while, about 8 years. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I got to pass it to the Welsh.
I've always played in like deep leagues. There is something so cathartic about just mocking and drafting in a 10-team league to the point where I've kind of held fast that I think you should play in a 10-team league, especially if you're a multi-league type of person. There's something so great because there is different strategy. You know, I mean, like taking some of those high-end players, pitching, for an example. I think pitching is a place where you can afford to go in on a Paul Skeens or a Tariq Skubal a little bit higher. The rosters are all kind of stacked. You've got to find the edges a little bit different. You can play around with some other strategies. Some players you might avoid in Roto 15 you can play here. I just really do like 10. I wouldn't do all but 10 or my only singular league be a 10, but I think it's a good mixture in the tool belt of fantasy 1. So I'm at 1. Probably the best spot I could possibly ask for in a 10-man, especially.
100%, because you're getting Shohei Ohtani here at the top, who's 2 players. And when you're in star-powered leagues, 10-team shallower leagues, every star counts. That's how you get an advantage. Joe Arico is at 106. I'm taking the turn at 110. We'll see how it goes. Welsh, you're on the clock. Spoiler alert, Shohei Ohtani off the board. Did you want to say anything about Shohei Ohtani and his greatness here? Or?
Well, if you guys didn't know about, no, I mean, I don't care about the positional stuff. We have 1 util. Position means absolutely nothing to me. In this format of a 10-team, like head-to-head, in theory, we could be playing daily transactions. And if we were, Ohtani's even more valuable. The pitching side doesn't come into the equation. But, we have more players that are going to beef up our bench, and that's more replacement level players. So like you can afford to take pitching early. You can afford to have a util top end because I can find replacements positionally a lot easier in a 10 team. So Ohtani is a really big advantage in 10.
Okay, Bobby Wood Jr. goes 102, then Aaron Judge 103, Jose Ramirez 104, Elio Cruz 105, then Gunnar Henderson to Joe Arico. Arico, let's talk about Gunnar Henderson there. You had Juan Soto, Corbin Carroll, Mookie Betts. You passed on all of those guys for Gunnar. Why was that?
I really like the projections. I really like the up and comingness of the Orioles lineup. If you're looking at the projection, 32 homers, 17 stolen bases. He's going to be an asset in the batting average category as well. Lowest projection there is about 270. And I think he can actually take another step forward. It's easy to forget that he's still just 23. So if he were to go 40-20 this year in that lineup, wouldn't surprise me at all.
Next up, after that run of Soto, Carroll, Mookie Betts, I stayed with outfielder Kyle Tucker, a Chicago Cub, playing for a big contract. I'm
Hmm.
excited for the Cubs this year. And Francisco Lindor at 201. Then Tatis goes right after. Skeens, Tariq Skubal. The two big pitchers go to Joe Arrico, who is on the board right now. He selected Julio Rodriguez. So let's talk about Julio and how you feel about potential for him. You passed on your boy Vladdy. I'm a little surprised about that. And Alvarez, who I personally have above Julio this year. So let's talk about the decision-making process there.
So I don't have any problem going any of those routes, but I think with Julio in the middle of the second round, I'm still getting somebody who, at his very worst, last season was the worst version of him. 20 homers, 24 stolen bases. I do think that there is a much better version of Julio there. We've seen it even the year prior, and I think he can get back to that 30-30 level. With the first two picks here, I might have just secured 70 homers and 50 steals with still a good batting average. The reason I'd like to take Vladdy is the batting average bump, but I'm still getting a decent batting average with that security and stolen bases as well here. So I like the first two picks, and I like the third pick even more, but we'll wait on that one for a second.
We'll wait on that one. Vlad goes next at 206, then Jordan Alvarez next at 207. You have Jackson Churio, 208, then Freddie Freeman, then Welsh, Bryce Harper, Ronald Acuna. Man, oh man, that must feel pretty good right now. I know you got to wait for Acuna, but to get the last two NL MVPs on the same roster, that seems like a pretty good situation.
It feels pretty
Actually,
good.
the last
Not gonna lie.
three NL MVPs, because Harper won it before that. So you're really doing okay there, Welsh. Not too shabby.
I had it locked in when I picked the one spot that I was going to take Ronald Acuna with this because, again, I can take some shots if I'm missing him for a little bit of time. The player pool I can have as a replacement exponentially better. So I'm very comfortable with that. Bryce Harper falling back. It's a 1B situation at first base. I've got all the upside in the world. I've got my stolen bases that are going to be covered in a really big way. All I got to do is just pick up, a little bit positionally and what I might lose for Acuna, but it is the all upside play across the board. So I am very happy with it. And I am on the clock right now.
You are. So while you're on the clock, we'll continue to look through here. Rafael Devers, Zach Wheeler, Jaron Duran, Logan Gilbert, and then Joe Arrico finally got Garrett Crochet away from the Welsh. That was the excitement you teased earlier. Let's discuss.
You had to do it. You were committed to doing this, Joe.
Yeah.
My reputation was on the line here. I had to do it, and I did it. And I think middle of third round for Crochet is about the market price you're going to have to pay. I have him as a top 5 starting pitcher. And I absolutely love getting him here, especially because Welsh didn't get him.
Well, I mean, that certainly works for me.
To be fair.
Trey Turner next, Kyle Schwarber. Then at 309, Ketel Marte. I took Jazz Chisholm. So building the outfield out a little bit. Jackson Merrill. I'm pounding the outfield here. And I'm somebody who tends to go offense early and often anyway in a 10-team league. I'm going to do it even worse because I feel like there's plenty of pitching out there that I like that I think is at a good value this year. So we'll see how that strategy plays out for me in this 10-team league. After I took Jackson Merrill, Matt Olson, then Austin Riley, Corbin Burns, Joe Arrico, you took Manny Machado. Seems like a pretty good value at 405.
Yeah, he is the third baseman that tends to fall a little bit in that elite tier. Batting average is such an important thing for me this year. I've talked about it a lot on our shows we've done, and I think I've built a really solid base of 270 plus hitters. I have speed, I have power, so I like that offensive base of Henderson, Machado, and Julio Rodriguez quite a bit.
Okay, after that selection of Machado, William Contreras, then Wyatt Langford goes at 407, 408, Class A, Reagans, and then Welsh, you took Chris Sale and Corey Seager. Let's discuss.
Boy, 10-team leagues just make you feel good. Like it is. You ever have like fantasy depression? Like there's nothing that is more of a boost than a 10-team league. And you're just like, did I just get Corey Seager in the 5th round? Yeah, man. I mean, I still have got Chris Sale in as a top 5 after that Cy Young performance. I know age is creeping up on him, but it's, strikeout monster, great team context. Corey Seager is a batting average monster. There's some injury risk, I suppose, now having Seager and Acuna, but I just don't care in the 10-team league. It's 4 high-end categories for Corey Seager. So my offense is humming. I've had a little bit of an investment on the pitching side. I'm feeling pretty great, boys. I'm feeling pretty great. That's what 10 teams do to you.
That's right. All the stars all the time. And you know what? Fantasy baseball, fantasy period is supposed to be fun. So if you like a 10-team league, play a 10-team league. If you like 12, if you like the challenge of 24, play 24. But at some point, again, you have to choose your own adventure here. Don't let somebody else run your fantasy league for you. You get in there, you figure out how you want it to be done. After Seager, Seager goes Jose Altuve at 502, Ozzy Albies at 503, O'Neill Cruz, Pete Alonso back with the Mets. Jacob DeGrom at 506. Joe Arico, do you believe that Jacob DeGrom is going to give you 20 starts this year? I'm going to put the number at 20.
I do. I do. I'm in the minority here because I see everybody talking about how they're fading DeGrom, and I understand it. Like the last few years have been very rough, but if you look at what happened with Chris Sale last year, with Justin Verlander a couple years before, it doesn't mean because you're old. It doesn't mean you're just cooked. You can still have a great season. Jacob DeGrom, off of the fresh Tommy John surgery, he's as healthy as he has been in a long time, and I think I can get 140 innings out of him. He's a top 5 starting pitcher for me pretty easily.
Okay, after DeGrom, pitching run, Cease, Kirby, then Michael Harris. Welsh knows my favorite guy.
Your
Blake
favorite.
Snell to me at 5'10, so I got my ace. And then I turned around and took a third baseman, Mark Vientos, because I think Vientos is going to absolutely crush in this lineup. And third base is a little suspect. Caminero is still floating out there. I got to start getting some corner guys because I'm a little hurt in the infield. I got a lot of outfielders, so give me Vientos. That's where I want to go. After that selection, Devin Williams, Edwin Diaz, and then Garrett Cole. I thought about taking Cole, but I'm just going to wait. Joe Rico, you took a closer here in Mason Miller. Let's discuss his upside. Certainly last year was a breakout season for Mason Miller. We talked about it so much in August. Excuse me, in August. We talked about so much in, I'm still in football mode in my brain. We talked so much in March last year about how it just made sense to make him the closer, give him the clean innings. Don't screw around with this guy. Don't get him up and down a million times in the bullpen. If you're going to put him in the bullpen, make him the closer, give him the clean inning, get it the 3 outs, and go home. And that was certainly a successful combination for Mason Miller last year.
Yeah, there's still a part of me that thinks like he should be a starter. He's too good to just relegate him to the bullpen forever in his early 20s. But I think he's a top 3 or 4 closer. I like to get at least one of these elite closers because I find in a lot of the early drafts I did, I'd wait, and then I end up with Lucas Irsag and somebody, and we see how that's gone so far. So I do like to lock down at least one guy that I can really be confident in, and then maybe speculate a little bit later. But Mason Miller, top 5 closer on an up and coming team. There's some injury risk, but I'm pretty confident that I can get 30 saves out of him.
Arico's like, hey, I'm going to take Lucas Ursig and Luke Weaver 2 months ago. This is going to be
Oh, yeah.
amazing. Everything is looking really good. You know what? I might even take Michael Kopech to go with him. And
November drafting, those
Yeah.
are the downside.
Yeah, like it can be. All right, let's continue on here with some of the other picks. I'm up, so I'm going to go make a pick here. Well, while I'm making my pick, talk about relief pitcher strategy, 10-team league, 2 mandatory RP spots. It feels like you do have to be, kind of aware here of the market, but at the same time, supply and demand, again, there's less teams, so 20 relievers have to be started. You have a little bit more leeway.
You're definitely right about that. Like there are the ability to stream is going to be a lot easier. Even in the same point, though, one thing I wouldn't do would be have too high investments sometimes where people do. Like, I wouldn't be like, all right, I don't even want to worry about it. So I'm going to take Class A and then I'm going to take Ryan Helsley or something. Take one. I considered taking a Class A or a Devin Williams or a Hader. And then I would just wait and take one of those late closers, maybe even a speculative closer like Justin Martinez or something. I would want to have one because you want to keep up with the Joneses in it. But that was kind of taken away from me. So I'm pushing it back just a tiny bit to more what you're alluding to, that there is a lot more depth. And like, while everybody else has filled up their first closer, I can keep getting these other positions and just get some like decent dudes.
Decent dudes. That's what we're
Decent
We're
dudes.
just
That's what I'm
decent
always
dudes
playing.
trying to have decent conversations here. So after Mason Miller, Josh Hader, another closer, Pablo Lopez, James Wood, Marcelo Zuna, then Welsh selects Michael King and Brent Rooker. We could talk about that in a second. I know he's on the clock. CJ Abrams goes to 702, then Willie Adames, Yamamoto, Marcus Simeon at 705. Teoscar Hernandez at 706. Back to you, Joe Arico. So Teoscar coming off a fabulous year for the Dodgers. No surprise there. He went back to LA. It feels like a pretty good situation. He is your second outfielder. How do you feel about Teoscar in 25?
I feel pretty good about him. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's getting older, but I think when you're batting behind Shohei, Mookie, Freddie Freeman, 100 RBI is nearly a guarantee. Still easily got 30 homer pop. I think he's a little bit undervalued. I think he's going about a round too late, so very happy to get him here.
Very good. I love also being able to look at the categories and the projections here and see what I need to draft. I've got steals, I got RBI. I got to get a little run boost. That's what I need right now. I'm a little behind in the runs scored. Teoscar Hernandez and Christian Walker, Shota Imanaga, Adley Rutschman after Christian Walker went. I was hoping he would make it to me. He did not. Josh Naylor ends up instead for me, and then I selected Framber Valdez. Welsh, I want to go back to your selections here because you took Brent Rooker and Michael King. And obviously, these are two players we loved going into last year and certainly look like they're poised to have good repeat seasons now.
Yeah, the Rooker one I'm super excited about. Just massive power. Obviously, we know there's a little bit of a benefit hitting in this minor league park that the A's are going to be in, the Athletics, by the way, not the Oakland. Not doing the money jar here.
Yeah.
Michael King, I will tell you, was a tiny bit of a pivot because I kind of thought I was going to have like another pitcher fall back to me with how this was going. I mean, but you guys, well, I was in the middle of that run. It was like, I think what you took Blake Snell, and then it was just pop, 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 pop. Jacob deGrom was someone I kind of wanted to sneak in as an SP2, simply because like a 10 team, he's even more palatable. So Michael King was kind of like a consolation prize, good strikeouts, under 3 ERA. There's some trade rumors out there. So I think I do need to start putting a focus because I went hitter with my next couple picks. I need to put some focus on pitching, but Sale and Michael King as the first two SPs is pretty good, but I do think I am behind the curve based on what some of these other teams have been able to do with pitching early.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take one of the biggest boosts. I love that. I love when the draft wizard's telling me, this guy's the bigger boost. Why don't you go ahead and take him? After you took those guys here, we're going to go through the 7th round. So I took Naylor at the end of the 7th, Framber Valdez at the 8th, then Raisel Iglesias at 802. Ryan Helsley goes next. Santander lasted a very long time. I really debated on taking him. I instead went with another pitcher there. Lawrence Butler, another outfielder for Joe Arrico. Alex Bregman goes next, then Aaron Nola, Brenton Doyle, Yainer Diaz, and then Jordan Westberg ends the 8th round. Joe Arrico building out the outfield here. You had Julio, then you have Teoscar, Lawrence Butler. That looks like a pretty nice outfield. And you weren't done there. You continue to pound the outfield here in the next couple picks. We're going to talk about it in a minute, but I like this strategy. You went BPA, you built out the pitching staff a little bit, and then you're just crushing the outfield, and that looks like a really good strategy in rounds 7 through 10 for you.
Yeah, outfield is a position that does dry up fairly quickly. And in a 10-teamer, it's not as bad, but 4 outfielder league, so 40 standard, and then you're talking about utility guys. So maybe 45 outfielders are going to get drafted. I'd rather lock down some of those elite targets because there are some guys at some other positions that I feel like I can target a little bit later, the corner infield, first and second. Not that I want to wait too long on them, but like you said, best player available here for a lot of these outfielders. They were just too good to pass up.
Too good to pass up there. Continuing on after Butler, Alex Bregman, as of recording this, destination unknown. Aaron Nola at 807, nice value there. I said Doyle, Diaz, then Westberg and Caminero. Welsh, you might not have gotten Crochet, but you got Caminero. So now you have Westberg, Caminero adding to the infield with Corey Seager and Bryce Harper. That feels like a pretty good spot there. Now, you still have Acuna who's going to miss some time, and Brent Rooker's your only outfield. How you feel about the outfield market here?
Yeah, I got to pay attention to it. We're only doing 4. I did put a heavyweight, like you said, into Westberg and Caminero. I just felt like they were the absolute best hitters. I've gone a little pitching heavy with my last 2 picks. I got a reliever and my 3rd starter, which we'll talk about. But there is some value at outfield, and there's going to be some guys you might have to take some risk on. There's some younger guys. I feel pretty good about where we're at right now. Like, it could go away if we start just having just boom, boom, boom. It just starts getting knocked off and we have an outfield run. I feel pretty confident whoever I run in here as a outfielder 3/2 for a short period of time, I still have a solid advantage. But if I get into my brain like I do sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, this guy's too good of a value in this guy, and then I skip in this next round, I might find myself being like, oh, now my 3rd outfielder is, you know you like Brandon Nimmo or something like that. Like that, I want to be a little bit
that aside.
heavier.
Like Brandon Nimmo's not a solid guy. How dare you, especially in this lineup now. This is the first time ever that 3 New York Mets are projected to hit more than 30 home runs in the same year ever. You know how long I've waited my whole life for that. Nimmo's not one of them, but the rest of this lineup's going to be good. I'm telling you, everything trickles down. It trickles down. Junior Caminero starts the 9th round. Then Travis Bazzana. Look at this. Team 2, Guardians fan buying in before Luis Robert. Welsh, I thought you were going to take Robert for sure.
Robert would been one of the picks that was like in my queue, but I had to take the young guys. I almost took Robert. It was literally those Robert 2 guys and Robert.
I would
Yeah.
have taken Robert over Westberg. Me personally, whatever. Sal Perez, Stephen Kwan, Brian Reynolds, Joe Rico continuing to crush outfield. Bryce Miller, Royce Lewis. Then at 909, Max Fried. I took Logan Webb as my number 3, about as steady of a pitcher you could possibly find. I like the steadiness of my rotation here. Snell, Framber Valdez, Logan Webb, guys who actually show up and make starts. What a concept. Riley Green at 1001. Then DeVries goes next. Batista, Luis Ariz, and Joe Rico, another outfielder. So just to recap here, Teoscar Hernandez, Lawrence Butler, Brian Reynolds, Seiya Suzuki. I'm going on tilt with this outfield run that you've created. Joe Rico, I mean, I am impressed. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's a lot of my favorite players this year, really, and they're just falling even just a few picks. I mean, Butler was probably right around where he's going, but Reynolds fell a little bit later than usual. Teo fell about a round. Suzuki in the 10th, I really like. A lot of my guys, I haven't done any of those my guys articles or anything like that, but there'll be a lot
No.
of the guys on my current team on that article or on that post or whatever it ends up being.
Okay, moving on to the draft board after all these outfielders are now gone. 1006 Hunter Brown, one of my favorite things. Cal Raleigh goes next. Why anybody would take a catcher early in a single catcher 10-team league, I'll never
People love
know.
it. People love it,
But
man.
whatever, that's fine. I mean, if you're gonna take one, fine. Take a big power guy. Okay, whatever. Luis Castillo, Duran, and then Welsh, of course, dips the toes in the closer water here. He ends up with Andres Munoz, and then Spencer Schwellenbach. There you go. Look, you couldn't
Hey,
get
my
Crochet.
guy.
You got the Schwellenbach. How does it feel?
I'll tell you this, in a 10-team league, I would have liked him as my SP4, but I'm just being a little picky here. I wanted to get Schwellenbach, low walks, low quality of contact against him, good strikeout numbers. And I think he's another one of those guys that's going to enable me to maybe take a shot or two. There's still some amazing pitchers. I mean, we are in the 110s, and if you're willing to take a little bit of risk, there are the returning guys. There's the McClanahans, there's the Alcantras in there. There's quite a few really, really great names at SP. If you're willing to take the risk, which I think you should be in a 10 team, because we know the streamers are going to be better. I would rather have the highest upside of pitchers with a little bit inherent risk than taking boring middle line guys when I could just stream and replace. I'm not saying like Logan Webb was actually a guy I really wanted, and I think he's a little bit boring, but he is super safe and he would have been a great pick. But I'm more saying I'm not going to take these high guys to pass. I'm going to pass on these guys, and I'm going to just try to get, get me a Seth Lugo a little bit later. And it's I'd rather play high upside in this, knowing I have the ability to stream a little bit better.
Okay, there you have it. There's going to be a couple less pitchers because I just doubled up, by the way, at the end of the board.
You're
Swellenbach,
smart.
Tyler Glasnow, Hunter Green, Freddie Peralta, Sonny Gray. There's your pitching run. Matt McClain goes to Joe Arico. We'll recap that pick. I know you're up on the clock. Roki Sasaki, Wilson Contreras, Cody Bellinger. Then I dip my toes in the pool of pitching. Tanner Bybee, Bailey Ober. There you go. 2 more guys. Give me all those AL Central guys. Loving it. Zach Gallen, I almost took him. I was going back and forth while Welsh was talking there. Do I take Ober? Do I take Gallen? I was going back and forth. I ended up taking Ober. Then Robert Suarez, Spencer Steer, and back to Joe Arico for Joe Ryan. So McClain and Ryan. Welsh and I had debate on the previous show. I like McClain. He is not in on it. He is not John McClain. He's a lesser McClain, but still a McClain I think people are worth drafting. You drafted him. Joe Arico, 1106. I still believe in Matt McClain. I think he just needs to get his reps up in spring. Had a good, decent performance in the AFL, showed a little pop. That's what you wanted to see. I think he gets back on track in 2025. What do you think?
Yeah, I do as well. I was updating some rankings yesterday, and I moved him up a few spots in second base. Second base is pretty bad. We've talked about that a lot this year. Joe and I are both Luis Garcia fans, but there's a couple of guys that you can target, but by and large, it's a pretty weak position. You got McClain, who's going to be probably right in the middle of that Reds lineup, and I think the lineup is very good. The ballpark is very good. You're getting a terrible position taken care of. So, yeah, in the 11th round, I really like Matt McClain. And then I went with Joe Ryan as my third starting pitcher. Just I needed another pitcher. I've talked about a lot on these shows how I'm really targeting whip. I want to keep the whip in the 115 or lower type of range, and the projections all like him to give you something in that range.
Okay. So he 2-1 on you, Welsh, on McClain. After Joe Ryan, Grayson Rodriguez, Shane McClanahan, boy, oh boy, those pitchers sure did disappear fast. My God, think about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 starters after Welsh's Schwellenbach. Will Smith, Mike Trout at 1209. So Welsh, you went with Christian Yelich and Randy Rosarena going back to the outfield. How does that feel? And how do you feel about missing out on the pitcher run there?
I'm okay. There's still some great pitchers. Not gonna lie, the guy that went right before you, Spencer Strider, was 100% someone I was gonna tag in here. I think getting like a Roki or a Strider or a Glass now is kind of fun, even though in the low projected but high production. You talked about the outfield. I just wanted to tap it. I thought there were a couple of the young guys. Dylan Cruz and Jason Dominguez were still out there, but Yelich, 2020 guy, Randy Rosarena, we know is a 2020 guy, some batting average issues. I 100% was going to break it though. I would have taken Mike Trout had he fallen, and he went right before me. He was the snipe right in front of me. I'd have taken him in a 10 team around 120 or so. Why the hell not? Though I would have looked at like an outfield with Trout and Acuna. It's a little bit worrisome. But again, there's like great dude. I might have been able to have like a Dylan Cruz on the bench if I had done that. It would have made me probably prioritize outfield a tad bit more. But I felt like in this format, I could take on that risk, but it didn't matter. I didn't. So I just took another injured outfielder in Christian Yelich, but lots of stolen bases.
Well, you can't have Trout, take Yelich. I mean, at the end of the day, I got a thumbs up there on my pick. Thank you, Draft Wizard. I appreciate you. And look, Draft Wizard is going to keep you real, Also use the cheat sheet creator too. You can create your own cheat sheets. You can use the expert rankings. You can pick your experts, combine them. And of course, everything gets updated whenever Joe Rico, Welsh, myself, or anybody you choose updates their ranks. And then you can use that cheat sheet when you sync your leagues over with Draft Wizard. So make sure you go do that and use the draft assistant also. So let's continue on here. After Rosarena, Tristan Casas, Jake Berger, Bo Bichette, Matt Chapman, Ryan Walker to Joe Rico, Anthony Volpe, Adolis Garcia at 1308, then Spencer Strider. Then I took Luis Garcia. I'm a man of my word. I'm talking about him on the show, so I'm going to do it. Ian Happ, I need another outfielder. He was the biggest boost. I took him. Jeff Hoffman goes next, then Vinny Pasquantino, Bryce Terang. I was monitoring him, trying to figure out, is that the guy? I ended up going with Happ instead. Jack Flaherty to Joe Rico. So, Joe, you got another closer here. And Jack Flaherty, a guy who experienced a rebirth last year in Detroit, then got dealt, came back to Detroit. Do you think that's the secret sauce for him repeating all the 2024 goodness?
I do, yeah. I think putting him back in that situation where he was able to find success, and he's had some success throughout his career, but it's been a little bit shaky. So going back to a place with a pitching coach that was able to revitalize his career, his numbers last season were really like superstar level stuff. So I think Flaherty, he's probably not going to be in the Cy Young running, but as the fourth starting pitcher for a 10-team fantasy league, I think that's a really solid place for him to land.
I wanted him bad. I wanted that one. That was one that hurt a little bit. He was an absolute target. I even kind of shrugged. I was like, no, Flaherty went, dang it.
Yeah. Well, look, you did okay with the pitchers. We'll get to yours in a second. I actually like the two you selected there. And
Yes,
you
sir.
had a good choice of three, because the guy that went right after you, I think I also would have selected. Dylan Cruz goes at 1406, then Nolan Arenado, Kevin Gossman, Brandon Nimmo, all right before Welsh. You must be so disappointed, Welsh. You couldn't take him.
Just
Gee
like
whiz.
you not getting Michael Harris, man. I was like,
I know, but it was right before. Just
Matt
sniped.
McClain and Nimmo, I can't have either.
Oh man. Justin Steele goes next for the Welsh, along with Brian Wu. You had Rodon in there, so Rodon went right after. I would have taken Rodon over Wu. Once again, pitches for the Yankees, more offensive support there. That's my thought process. So let's walk through. You had Steele, Wu, and Rodon on the board. Why was it Steele and Wu over Rodon?
Well, I mean, Steele, I think across the board, he's the number one of these guys. I like the win projection.
I would agree
like
with that. That I agree with.
Yeah, strikeout. I'm in across. Wu, what I really liked about it was lowest walk rate. It's under 3 walk per 9. Strikeouts are not there, but this is a team that has Schwellenbach, Michael King, Chris Sale, and this was going to help lower my whip. I mean, both Schwellenbach and Wu, both guys with under 5 walk per 9, low quality of contact. Maybe Wu upticks the strikeouts. This was really just about kind of maintaining some of my innings, some of that whip, some of that ERA. Guy had a sub 3 ERA. So that's why that was easy. I thought the context was his team. And I will tell you, on the Draft Wizard, when you're looking, he actually was the biggest boost. The number one percentage to take by experts was Carlos Rodon, but Wu had the designation. He was the biggest boost to my team context. And I agreed with that on the low whip and low walk number. So that's why I took Wu to go with Justin Steele. And I now have 5 SPs.
There you go. Rodon goes next, 1503, Horner, then Bogarts, Tovar, Joe Rico, Sandy Alcantara. Expectations for him coming back from Tommy John, what does it look like in your mind?
Considering he was healthy before the end of last season, I think that we could probably see 25 starts out of him. Is he going to be going 8 innings every time out like we saw from Sandy in the past? Probably not. They're probably going to be a bit more careful with him. And I also think there's a good chance he gets dealt at some point from Miami. Hopefully it's not to the Dodgers, but pretty much anywhere he goes is going to be a positive in terms of win projection. So as the fifth starting pitcher in the 15th round, I'm totally on board with it. I know there's some risk on my staff here for sure, but in a league this shallow, I dig it.
Next up here after Alcantara, Kodai Senga 1507, Jason Dominguez, then Luis Gil at 1509. I went with another starting pitcher, Seth Lugo at 1510. And then I took Jackson Holiday at 1601. I'm believing, and I needed a guy in the middle infield. I'm looking around. I'm like, if everything breaks right for Holiday this year, he could be a monstrous player. This was everybody's cash bet, easy chalk guy for rookie of the year last year. I know it didn't work out. Let's not give up altogether. Can we just have a little bit more patience with these guys? But I really like getting Lugo where I got him too. Last year, 181 strikeouts, a 3 ERA. He was my breakout pitcher in last year's Black Book that I wrote up. And guess what? Turned out to be pretty spot on there. So Holiday goes next for me. Then Ohapi, Donovan, Urseg at 1604, JT Realmuto to Joe Rico. Now, Joe, I got to say, Realmuto's age, declining power, all that really worries me. Why go for the catcher here instead of maybe building out some more pitching? I know outfield you've got on lock, but why Realmuto? What do you see in him this year that makes you excited about drafting him?
So I did a write up on him the other day. It is a bit of a concern at his age. You don't really know what you're going to get, but he's still a 10% barrel rate, 46% on the hard hit, 79th percentile sprint speed. So I think he can give you some steals. He's still in a very good lineup. He's not going to lose playing time to Garrett Stubbs. So I think you're still getting 120, 130 games out of him. In this kind of format, I do like to wait pretty far on catcher, but 16th round, I think I've waited long enough here. I'm happy with Real Muto where I got him.
Okay. Continuing on with the draft board here, after Realmuto, Jared Jones goes, Walker Jenkins, Goldschmidt, Tanner Scott. Then Welsh, you took Diaz and Neto. Let's talk about those two selections. Another closer here, and Zach Neto, one of your favorite things.
Well, definitely my cue, the top of where I was going, absolutely sniped in front of me. Jared Jones and Paul Goldschmidt were going to be the back-to-back picks. I'm now trailing in strikeouts a little bit with, Schwellenbach projections aren't insane. Brian Wu brings it down. I really wanted Jared Jones. I love him. 2+ pitches that have 130 plus stuff plus rating. And Paul Goldschmidt, I thought was a crazy value here, and I could have used him at corner infield. Both of those got swapped on me, so a little bit disappointed, but I get my second closer and Alexis Diaz. I really like the Reds' potential contention this year. And Zach Neto, kind of an Acuna thing, going to miss a potential amount of time, but a 10-team league with a 20-30 guy at my middle infield, I feel very comfortable with.
After those two selections from the Welsh, Chase DeLauder, boy, Team 2 is building that dynasty team up there. Let's go to Kirby Yates. Again, this is why I'm waiting on closer. Kirby Yates didn't go to the 17th round here. Alec Boehm, Kikuchi goes next. Joe Rico took Mason Wynn. Nice selection there. Langoliers, Isaac Paredes, then Eugenio Suarez. I was hoping Paredes made it to me. He did not. So I double tapped closer here. And guess what? McGill was still out there. I took Ben Joyce, Pete Fairbanks. So I like the upside of the strikeout ability of Joyce there and Fairbanks. So again, I waited till 17 and 18. I got my two closers. I feel good about that. Pete Crow Armstrong goes next. Xavier Edwards, Nick Castellanos, and then Sanchez. Joe Arrico, I know you're on the clock, so I'm going to pause things for you because we don't want to talk about Mason Wynn and Christopher Sanchez. Wynn, a guy that Welsh and I both like a ton, and Sanchez, another guy that we both feel is being very undervalued. It's interesting because, I feel like everyone's talking about Luzardo and, all this stuff because he's now in Philadelphia, but kind of ignoring the season that Sanchez had a little bit.
Yeah, Luzardo. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
I used to think Luzardo was the next superstar going to win Cy Youngs. At this point, I'm not sure.
Well, he's only Sanchez, what did we say Welsh the other day? What, he's 27 or something like that? Yeah. We're like, oh my God, I can't believe he's still so young.
And coming off of he's a year removed from a pretty monstrous big strikeout season thing. The hope is that Stanfield had him as a sleeper, and you hope that Luzardo's going to be able to kind of bounce back with the Phillies.
You can continue to filibuster if you like about Sanchez, Joe.
Yeah, so with both, with Sanchez and Wynn, with both of them, they're both huge targets of mine. Sanchez is going to be adding a pitch. He was already really good, and there's actually an update that Eno did to Stuff Plus, and Chris Sanchez comes out looking quite a bit better than he did before. I think his stuff is now in like the 108, 109 range when it was like around 100 before.
Probably work on the
Really,
changeup too. Stuff Plus
yeah,
always, Always talked about. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like Stuff Plus
no, you're
always
good.
struggled with changeups and how to rate them, and Eno talked about it all the time. So I haven't even looked at it yet. My assumption would be that they found another rhythm algorithm of how to start pushing changeups, because that's Chris. I love the Chris Sanchez pick because that's Chris Sanchez's bread and butter. He's adding a new pitch in that cutter, but it is changeup strikeout craziness. So I would assume if they figured that out, that's going to boost that Stuff Plus.
Yeah, they have this changeup stuff plus at 118, and he's 104 overall, and that was not captured
Yeah.
before. And he was fantastic last season. Adding a pitch as well this year should do wonders for him. Even if it doesn't, even if we just get a repeat, I love it. And then Mason Wynn, I'm also a huge fan of Mason Wynn, and we got a kind of interesting report the other day that he's looking to really start running a lot this year. So if we saw 35, 40 stolen bases from Wynn, I don't think that would really surprise anybody to go along with everything else he already does. Pretty good batting average asset, non-zero power, good defense, going to keep him on the field. So I love these two picks. I don't know how you guys let me get them in round 18 and 19, but
I
You're
tried.
just crushing it. You're crushing it, Joe Rico. All right, you're on the clock again, so let's let you go. Reynaldo Lopez, Robbie Ray at 1807, McGill, then Luke Weaver. Welsh goes Ryan Pepio and Brandon Fott. Fott, a guy that we talked about, just the last show we did, where all the xERA, all the, FIP numbers are all better than what the ERA was. And I keep saying the Fott's meltdown in the second half was just a matter of tax and fatigue and innings. And I think he'll be perfectly fine after building that up. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. It was like a 6 and a 7 ERA in the final 2 months of the year. New pitching coach is in there to fix some stuff. His sweeper is one of the best pitches in 143 stuff plus before the update. I don't know what the new update looks like. He's got to probably work through that fastball sinker adjustment, maybe throw more changeups this year so he can get left-handed hitters out. But good strikeout potential. Dude lowered his walks down to around 5, which is really elite. So I'm very optimistic about Brandon Fott, and then Pepio again. I'm just trying to stack some strikeouts in here. There weren't a ton of high-end strikeout guys. I definitely was hoping Chris Sanchez would be one of those players that he can boost up, even though he's not a big strikeout guy. But my rotation is done because we're not doing bench here. So I've got my closers and my starters here. I'm left with just catcher and a corner infielder to finish this off.
Ryan Presley goes next, Nick Kurtz, then Sean Manaea. Nice value at 1904. Jurickson Profar, one of our favorite things at 1905. I wanted him to get there. Zach Eflin, a guy that Welsh likes. Now, Eflin is a guy that I am not excited about. Welsh was pointing out his value. So, Joe, clearly this time it's 2-1 against me on a player. So let's talk about Zach Eflin, why you drafted him here at 1906.
Get him.
I still think the skills are very, very good. Was he what we were hoping for this season? Not really. Coming off of what he did in 2023, he was fantastic, but he was still very good. Like, I think people view it as a disappointment, but he had a 3.59 ERA and a 115 WHIP. I mean, as my last pitcher, if he can just do that again, I'll happily take it. But I think that the strikeouts, we've seen the potential for him to be in the low to mid 20s. So even if he's not a huge strikeout guy, I'm getting those ratios secured, and that's been a huge, huge thing for me. My WHIP is projected at 1.13 right now, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I got to work on my categories. Again, this is what you use Draft Wizard for. And if you don't like a pick you make in the simulator, you can just back it out if you didn't like the runs that happened to you and make another selection. And you start to learn and shape your draft strategy. That's the whole point. So again, use the ultimate cheat code. It's Draft Wizard. Let's go to the next selection after you took Eflin, Christian Campbell off the board, Luis Rengifo, then Bednar. Kerry Carpenter goes to me at 1910. Looking forward to his season this year. Shane Boz, looking forward to him also breaking out. We've all been waiting for Shane Boz all these years. He's my last pitcher there. Bryson Stott goes next. Jose Barrios, Estevez, Joe Rico, Ryan Mountcastle. I was just talking about the other day. I said, I'm worried that he gets squeezed at some point if Kobe Mayo starts to have a really good year at AAA. Are you worried that at some point Mountcastle might not have everyday at-bats available to him?
I don't worry about that so much. I think that he's still probably 120 to 140 game type of range. It is a thought. It isn't something I'd really seriously considered that he could lose playing time. I think considering his age, he's still just 27 years old. He's shown elite power in the past, and they are making some changes out in the left field wall this year, bringing it in, not necessarily for him, but I think Mountcastle can really be a beneficiary there and hit 25 to 30 home runs, still be a good batting average asset. So it is something I hadn't really considered, to be honest with you, Joe. But if a couple of those prospects start to really start hitting the cover off the ball, then they're going to have to make some hard choices there. Baltimore has just a surplus of prospects still. I would have thought they would have traded it for pitching at this point, but
Yeah,
that's
I
a
would have
whole other
thought so
podcast.
too. I mean, I would have thought they did it last year, but they did not. It was very bizarre. I thought they should, like, you were all in. You had the record. You had the playoff. You needed some more help in the pitching staff. I don't know why. I mean, they've only got so many spots for all these guys. So I know they moved Norby, but like, come on, like, you've got so many of these guys. Not every one of them is going to hit. But my also thing with Mountcastle is he's been there a while. Eventually, you're going to have to pay him. So he's going to be odd man out. There's already some trade rumors this offseason, too. And the Mets were kicking the tires on him at first base and some other people, too. It's going to be really interesting to see. Mountcastle also last couple of years a little bit in decline on some of those numbers too. Tyler O'Neill, Hodge, Rasmussen, Taj Bradley at 2009, and then you took Tolia at 2010. Tyler Stevenson, Jordan Romano, Nick Pavetta, Bowden Francis, Justin Martinez, Joe Rico took Josh Young. Welsh, Tolia, the guy that you've been targeting, you got him. Let's talk about it.
Very, very excited about Tolia dropping here. I think it's 35 plus home run potential. Obviously, batting average is going to be a question, but there's some Colorado split stuff in there. Insane, like 17% barrel, 50% hard hit rate. Great for a 10-team league, especially when let me look at right now. I'll tell you the number, I was projected as the number 1 batting average. I moved to 3. Boy, I'm very excited to talk about this score here.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
I'm very, very excited, guys. I will say this. If we were doing bench and more, I would not have taken my final catcher. I would have taken Matt Shaw and done a little bit more value, but I had to take a catcher. But yeah, Tolia made a ton of sense. Tyler Stevenson as my catcher made a ton of sense. And guys, this scorecard makes a ton of sense. I'm very excited for you to read it off, Joe.
Oh, I
Especially near the end of this.
Well, I had an A+ the last time we draft in a big boy and girl league, which was a 12-teamer. In the 10-team, I got a D+. Draft Wizard hated me, and I know why. It gave me reaches on guys like Jackson Holiday. It gave me reaches on Mark Vientos. I mean, like, I understand. I'm going to get my guys regardless, but again, you have to listen to some of the projections sometimes and make sure you understand what's going on there. So I did not do well here on the draft today, according to Draft Wizard. I am just the 9th out of 10th. However, the Welsh, perfect. And Joe Rico, number 2. So you guys really carried the torch today. Welsh, who liked your draft? Who could possibly hate your draft? I mean, it was perfect. You got 100. I don't know if I've ever seen that before.
I've never gotten 100 ever.
You broke Draft Wizard.
Also to point out, Joe at 2 got an 88. I've never seen a 12-point difference between first and second. I got a perfect 100 out of 100. It loved Ohtani and Harper, obviously. It said steals were Zach Neto and Tyler Stevenson, getting him 3 rounds later. I was projected to be top 3 in runs, average, strikeouts, and the best in the league of runs, RBI, stolen bases, and wins. And get this, Joe Pisapia loved my draft more than any single person on the planet. Joe Pisapia was 1. I was 2. Kelly Kirby was 3. Ario Cohen was 4. Guess who hated my draft more than anybody?
Joe Rico.
Joe Arico hated a perfect draft. We
got to get a picture of Joe Rico here too. Why is it just like a stupid little profile egg thing?
100 out of 100. Joe Arico says, no thanks. I don't want that. Also, Dalton Del Don, Chris Towers, Pianowski didn't like Ryan Pepio apparently, but Joe Pisapia, love. Joe Rico, hate. I'm in a pretty good spot. I do love this team quite a bit.
Well, it's funny because it says I didn't like my own draft, and I'll be honest, I don't love it. I don't think it's a D. I think it's a B- maybe this time around. I haven't done any 10-teamers, so a little bit of a learning curve there. But you, of course, are going to have a huge advantage having Ohtani. It's 2 guys already. However, thumbs up for me. These are some pretty good people. Joe Arico, I don't know if you heard of him. He gave me a thumbs up. Scott White, one of the best in the business. Scott Pianowski. So I got both Scotts. And Kelly Kirby, right here, our wonky penguin, our resident penguin. So if those are the people liking my draft, then I think D+ is not fair. Joe Arico, who liked your draft, who hated your draft, what was the summary for you? What should you have done differently?
Well, there's a goofy-looking guy who works for FantasyPros who has a backwards hat on right now, who happened to like my draft more than anybody else, and it was me.
I thought it was Derek Brown. Okay, yeah.
Well, when Derek starts doing baseball rankings, then we'll know something.
I had this to Welsh. I think we should have Derek and Andrew come on a show, just use Draft Wizard. They know nothing, and see how they do. I think that would be really fun.
A great idea to get they don't even know the players.
They don't know the players, but just using Draft Wizard, see if they can outscore us. I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, we should do that.
And then me and Bubba can do a football podcast next year. And we can do a Freaky Friday. So yeah, I like my draft. Dalton Del Don, Scott Pianowski. I got the Yahoo love. Brad Camara from Rotoballer also liked it. Who did not like it? Number one, Joe Pisapia did not like it.
I
Kelly
like
Kirby, Ariel Cohen, and Scott White also didn't like my draft. So I'm torn here because some of my favorite people, some friends of mine, don't like my draft. But 88, I'll take an 88.
Yeah. All right. Let's look at the tail of the tape here, review these rosters real quick here. I'll just run through mine again because I'm the worst. Alvarez, a catcher who I love this year, so I've talked about him much. Josh Naylor, always great. Luis Garcia, one of my favorite things. Lindor, Jazz Chisholm, Mark Vientos, Jackson Holiday, Kyle Tucker, Jackson Merrill, Riley Green, Ian Happ, Kerry Carpenter. Look, maybe I don't have like enough star power. I don't have Ronald Acuna and Otani, but at least my guys are going to be playing in April. Blake Snell, Framber Valdez, Logan Webb, Tanner Bybee. It's a great rotation. Ober, Lugo, and Boz. Then Fairbanks and Joyce. I'd go to war with this. This is not a D-plus team. Sorry, I might have to redo some of my rankings here and check this out. Joe Arico, you were second place. JT Realmuto, Mountcastle, McLean, Gunnar Henderson, Machado, Young, Mason Wynn, then the outfield killer, Rodriguez, Hernandez, Teoscar, that is, Lawrence Butler, Brian Reynolds, Seiya Suzuki, the staff, Garrett Crochet, Jacob DeGrom, Joe Ryan, Jack Flaherty, Mason Miller, Ryan Walker, Alcantara, Sanchez, and Eflin. What's the biggest strength of this team, Joe, in your opinion?
I think it is the outfield depth. Even if there is somebody who potentially busts, let's say Lawrence Butler isn't what we're thinking he's going to be or something, then I can swap in somebody from the utility. And it's a 10-team league, so that waiver wire goodness is definitely going to be there for the taking because we only drafted in total like 200 players or something. So there are going to be a lot of great available players throughout the season. I took some risks with my starting pitching, Crochet and DeGrom. Some people love it, some people would hate it, but it is risky for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if those two both throw 160 innings, then I should be cooking with gas.
Speaking of cooking with gas or load of helium or whatever, because Welsh is floating right now. Tyler Stevenson, Bryce Harper, Jordan Westberg. I don't know. I'm still not there on Westberg. I got to get there. I got to watch more tape. Corey Seager, Junior Caminero, Tolia, Neto, Ronald Acuna, Brent Rooker, Randy Rosarena, Christian Yelich. I mean, how can you get 100 having Christian Yelich on a team? I don't care when you draft him. I don't see that. Whatever. Shohei Ohtani is your util. And then you've got Chris Sale, Michael King, Schrellenbach, Steele, Brian Wu, Pepio, Brandon Pfaadt, Andres Munoz, Alexis Diaz. Welsh, it's a very good team. I don't think it's 100. But I would give it an A. I would give it or an A minus.
I'll give you a tip here if you'd like because you were saying
I could use
redo
one,
my
apparently.
ranks. Yeah, no. If you, I know you got to. It's really difficult to get ranks in and stuff. If you'd like and you'd like to score better, you can actually just set a cheat sheet and you can put my ranks for your drafts moving forward, and then you could just use off of my list, and you might put together a little bit better of a team. I'm just saying, but
Draft Wizard is for everyone.
I love it.
Download it today. FantasyPros.com/MLB Draft Wizard. That's the place to find it. Have some fun. Who won this draft? Drop your comments below in the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications. Let us know which team you like the most and why is it the Welshes? Probably. I don't know. I would put my team right there with you, buddy. I don't know. I'm feeling. I have to revisit. Maybe I have to talk to the dev team, see what's going on with that D+. But at any rate, tell us which Joe you liked more, Welsh's team, who was the best draft here. And then, of course, subscribe to the channel and, of course, the podcast. Wherever you get the podcast, that'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Joe Rico and the Perfect Welsh, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
We found my nickname.